So I recently got addicted to a great YouTube series by Ms. called 4 Game Devs Jam Off the Same Art Kit. The videos are highly entertaining, and it's so incredible to see how creative the devs get with the assets. I immediately wanted to participate in one of these, so I was excited to see an announcement video for Ms. Jam 1. Ms. Jam 1 is where instead of just 4 devs jamming off the same art kit, many game developers jam off the same art kit. 2,560 devs to be exact. Wow. Well, let's begin. The rules were simple. Make a game in 48 hours. The hours do not have to be consecutive. Use any public domain copyright-free music, sound effects, and fonts, or make your own. You must use the art kit provided. Altering the art is okay, as long as after any edits it's still obvious that your art assets are from the kit. Submitted games will be judged on 3 categories: engagement, creativity, and overall polish. This is the art kit that was provided, a 16x16 tile set with so many possibilities. The first thing I thought of when I saw this art kit was the original Game Boy. The small assets are the same size as the sprites used in The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, so I was thinking about that game. Growing up, Link's Awakening was one of my favorite games. It was the only thing I played on my Game Boy. I loved exploring Maid Village, listening to the catchy background music, and talking to everyone. There was this very memorable bit in the game where you got a Yoshi doll from a minigame, traded it with someone for a new item, and then traded that item with someone else for another item, and so on. You were traveling all over the map trying to figure out who to trade with for the next item. I wanted to recreate this experience. I wanted to make something that made me feel like a kid again, playing my Game Boy, exploring a small town with catchy music, and trading items. I decided to start with a basic story. What was my character's goal? I saw this crown and this king sprite, and I recalled a story from the Legend of Drit Spine of the World book. In this book, the city of Orkney was ruled by a rash-acting young man. He falls in love with a young peasant and swiftly takes her away to his castle. This causes tremendous heartache for another young man. So I decided this is how my game would begin, and the character's goal would be to get revenge on the king and rescue his true love from the king's clutches. Shit. This is just a Mario plot. Anyway. The first thing I did was convert the art to make it look like it was from the Game Boy. I did this by simply downloading a Game Boy Color palette for Photoshop and quickly swapping the colors of everything by adjusting the color table. The final version of my tile sheet ended up looking like this. Next, I decided on an engine. I wanted to use Unity, but I had never made a 2D game in Unity before. I was struggling to figure out how it all worked. I tried to test out splitting up a tile sheet, but for some reason the engine would just crash each time I tried. I made a note to learn more about making 2D games in Unity and then moved over to Game Maker Studio 2. I started implementing the very basic features of my game, those being the ability to move around using the WASD keys and a dialogue system. For moving around, I set up everything using a DS list. When a movement key is pressed, it adds a letter to the list. If I let go of a movement key, it removes the letter from the list. I then read the DS list with a switch statement to see what letters are being pressed and what order they were pressed in. With that information, my character changes sprites and moves accordingly. One of the most important parts of the movement code was to make sure the player wasn't getting stuck on anything. Here you can see the player is trying to walk between these two objects, but it's impossible to get through. You have to line it up pixel perfect. To fix this, I added some code that would help nudge the player over a bit, even if it wasn't perfectly aligned, making navigation easy and removing any frustration. Next, I set up the dialogue system. I challenged myself to make an exact copy of the boxes from Link's Awakening. I first set up the box position and made the animation of it opening up by adjusting the height over time. Once opened, I ran some code to start displaying the desired text in a teletype fashion. In the end, I had something that looked and sounded like this. From here, I decided to focus on the story, music, and sound effects of the game. I wrote up a script for the game's intro, and then turned that script into a cutscene using simple code to make things happen on certain keyframes. I spent a majority of the day generating sound effects with a software called SFXR, importing those sounds into Ableton Live, and then using a sampler to make music with them. I ended up making some really great musical loops that sounded very Game Boy authentic. I had a main theme, a saddish theme, some battle music, and a creepy theme. I was about 11 hours in at this point, and this was my progress. With the intro cutscene, title screen, music, and majority of sound effects sorted, I started working on an encounter system. This would be what hopefully made my game unique and stand out from the others. The first thing I did was make it look like Pokemon to hopefully strike a chord of nostalgia to get players feeling like a kid playing Game Boy again. I had an idea to make a dialogue-based encounter mechanic. There would be a mood meter that started at neutral, and depending on what was said during the encounter, the mood would raise towards happy or lower towards mad. To complete the encounter successfully, you would have to raise the meter to max happiness. Lowering the meter to max anger would cause you to fail the encounter. I didn't want to spend too much time on this, so I just made a couple of arrays with different dialogue options and had the encounter cycle through them. At this point, I started on the inventory system. I wanted encounters to result in the player getting an item if the encounter was successful. Just like the dialogue encounters, this used a simple 2D array. I made a script that could look for an empty slot in the array, and then replace the empty slot with an item. I then started to add some NPC characters that you could interact with and give items to. If you speak to a character and you have an item they are interested in, it will start a special dialogue option that replaces your current item with a new item. This was achieved similar to the other script that checks for an empty slot. Instead, this script checks for a specific item and replaces it with a new one. Honestly, the code was all straightforward and overall simple. The real difficulty of this project came from the tedious work on the cutscenes and the heavy amount of polish. I wanted to do more than just capture the Game Boy aesthetic. I wanted it to be indistinguishable. Each villager needed to have their own story and say something interesting or funny. I wanted each encounter to be engaging and strike curiosity. I spent an incredibly long time working on each cutscene and every screen transition. In the end, I had a small adventure where the player had to capture a cat, get a key to unlock a cemetery gate, stand brave against danger, return a lost dog, help a ghost put his body to rest, and scare the hell out of guards to get them out of your way, all to defeat the king and rescue your true love. My name is Brad, also known as the T-Virus, and this has been my very first game devlog ever. I really hope you enjoyed watching. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling me what you thought about the video. Thank you so much for watching. A link to my game is in the description below, and also Ms., if you're watching, thanks for this awesome jam. I'm looking forward to more in the future.